Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We return today to our book club meeting, studying the book from the psychological series by spiritual author Joanna de Angelis. And this book has such a powerful, impactful group of messages. So during our Sunday book club meetings, we are discussing Wake Up and Be Happy. Today, it marks about 6 weeks that we started our journey on this book. We are on chapter 5 after our introductory meeting. And just to remind everyone who's not been here before, this series you can start watching at any given point. It contains 30 challenging topics to all of us. So together we will spend 30 minutes on a weekly basis to review each topic and reach somehow an optimistic viewpoint to lead us to a very positive spiritual understand of our behavior, the human behavior. So let's go to the next slide where we're going to cover our topics of discussions. And today is the live stream is on May 15th. So happy Sunday, everyone. What are we going to talk today? Well, we'll discuss the notion of balancing opposing forces. We're going to spend the most of our time together there. And then we're going to talk a little really, really important subject, which is falling to the trap, which is the temptation of seeing yourself as a victim. We're also going to be defining or interpreting what is temptation and how important temptation is in our lives. So let's go ahead and get started with this next slide where we're going to be discussing opposing forces. And the image here of a swimmer, right, through swimming through water is very compelling to me. I swam most of my childhood and youth, and understand how difficult that water is. Right, it creates friction to us, but it is in life. So the hypothesis that Joanna brings to us today is that for us to grow stronger spiritually, we need to embark in this quite long journey. I would say it's a very, very long path. And the destination in this journey is actually the acquisition of being good, of living well, of expressing a state of goodness. So when we start to looking into that, and that everyone is in the very first sentence of this very small chapter, right, where she brings up this notion of being good, immediately we start to think about, what are the two concepts that she's bringing just with that small sentence? And there are two concepts. Concept number one, and that concept is of what is to be a good person. And you can best, really best find the description of that if you read the Gospel According to Spiritism by Allan Kardec. And if you go to chapter 17, item 3, Allan Kardec discusses the good person. In the interest of our very short time here, I will not read it, but I highly recommend that you go to do that on your own. And if you don't have the book, the gospel, either printed or online, please try www.kardecpedia, KARDECPEDIA, kardecpedia.com. And there you can find all of the Spiritist books by Allan Kardec, and you can access, and it's fully searchable. So you just put it down, good person, and you find there. Or, as I said before, in the Gospel According to Spiritism, chapter 17, item 3, you get there as well. The text is available in multiple languages, including English. So I highly, highly recommend it. But as a teaser, let's just share a few of the words in that chapter. And I'm going to read where it says, sorry for that. I'm going to turn off my phone. Sorry for that. It's off now. The truly good person. So let's think about, if I want to be a good person, right? What do I have to do? Well, in the chapter, the Gospel according to Spiritism says the truly good person is one who complies with the laws of justice, law, and charity in their highest degree of purity. So, of course, you need to know, well, what are those laws, right? What is to be just? What is to be loving? What is to be charitable, right? That good person examine their conscience, and they review all of their actions, their own actions, and they'll ask themselves, have they violated those laws, right? Yes or no? Have they practiced any wrongdoing? And by that, many texts would call it good and evil, right? The scale of justice, good and evil. And some texts would say, have they practiced any evil? And I just say, I pause here to say, let's read evil as, or wrongdoing as, the ability to cause pain. So have us, as we reflect upon ourselves, caused pain to ourselves or to others, right? If this person, the good person, have done all the good that was possible, have they also voluntarily disregarded perhaps the opportunity to be useful? If anyone has any complaint to make about themselves, about them. And finally, if they have done to others everything they wish done to themselves. So the chapter is not very extensive, but it's so dense, so rich that I believe all of us should read that many times over. An opportunity for us to look and see everything that we should think about when we try to become a good person. So as we move on to the second concept that that very tiny sentence in the book says, is the second the concept number two, that you also find in the same book, right? So the Cosmic According to Spiritism, Kardec references the idea that we are immortal spirits, immortal souls. We live a temporary life, this life, and after this life will live again many other lives. So, as an immortal soul, we evolve. As we evolve, we have to understand that there are also hierarchies of worlds. So, with that, in that book, chapter 3, item 4, Kardec talks about the idea of worlds that. Spirits of different levels of maturity will live there, right? So, why is it important for us to talk about? We talked about be good. Well, briefly stating that those primitive words that are number one, and they're just broad terminology here, but the lowest category is primitive worlds. Second is worlds of trials of atonement, or trials of expiation. This is where the hierarchy of spirits that we are right now. We live on earth, which is a world of trial and atonement. After we evolve, all of us collectively, but us individually as well, we will be able to live in a higher grade, if you will, world, which is the world of regenerative world. Then, after that, celestial world. And finally, at the end of this very long journey, we reach the happy world. Well, the interesting component here in this discussion found in the Gospel according to Spiritism is that we recognize, and this is central to this entire chapter of the book, is recognizing that we all, inherent in us, we have that capacity to do evil. Also, I mentioned this before, right? Evil, what is evil? Well, we all have the capacity inside of us to harm, to cause pain. And this is important because, as Joanna de Angelis series of books in the psychological series, we really start to open up not so much the ability to harm others, but the ability to harm ourselves, to cause pain to ourselves, right? So, in any case, it's the capacity to harm that is inside all of us. And spoiler alert, if you read, that capacity to harm ourselves and others will remain with us all the way until the very end when we reach the celestial world. So, what does it mean? If I can cause, I have the capacity to cause harm to ourselves, what does it mean? Am I not a good person? And that's the topic of discussion today. We like a hand that we have that can do so much good. That same hand can hurt. We can punch. We can use a gun. We can use a knife. We can do so many things with the same instrument of doing good. We can do harm. And that's the dichotomy that once we have awareness that this hand can also slap, punch, hit, whatever, we now are very careful with it as an instrument of pain to us and others. So this is for everything. Just to conclude then is as we go through this, this inherent capacity to harm is in us right now and in the next life and the life after that. The point here, though, is that the more we become aware of this ability to hurt, to suffer, to cause pain, and to feel pain, the more we are aware of it, the more we're able to look at all the impulses that we have that live inside of us with a different lens. Does this make sense? I hope it does. I think it's really an amazing set of discussions there on in the gospel as well as in the chapter of the book. But back to the chapter. The chapter today is facing temptation. In it, Joanna de Angelis really highlights that idea of opposing forces, point counterpoint, and as we learn to appropriately or adequately, right? So we don't react to something much higher than the source. When we start to look at it in the best way possible to address whatever, and that usually it's whatever it's directionally opposed to us, to those forces within us, the sorry, the capability, I can't speak today, the capability to harm as well as the desire to grow. So think about it. The capacity, the capability to harm is the opposing forces to the desire to do good, to be a good person, to grow, to mature spiritually. So the challenges that Joanna brings to us, which is truly the basis of this discussion, it's inherent in the entire process, is that what many, many, many people, including your friend here, call temptation, right? Is that temptation is challenging because we should connect to it, right? We should, the temptation we is an opportunity to confront with the most dangerous existential conflict, and many people call it the perverse side of ourselves, our shadow, the things that when we are aware that exist in us, we try to push down, but temptations are bringing those up full frontal for us to look and connect and reflect upon. So, the awesome, awesome idea here is that once we recognize those conflicts, right, instead of denying, oh, no, no, I am not an arrogant person. I'm a very humble one. I'm just kidding in terms of examples, right? Or, oh, no, no, I'm not impatient. I can handle. I'm not intolerant. Whatever that may be, that will define the moment, right? But when we recognize that impulse is inside of us and we allow to understand and using a language that belongs to my profession, project management language, right? When we allow ourselves to understand that there is a risk, which is to cause or suffer pain, right? So there is a risk. And when we start to really prepare ourselves, create pockets of insurance, create opportunities to mitigate those risks so that we can manage them through life, we we escape, if you will. So I just want to say, how about that? Once we are aware of that potential to hurt inside of us, once we are able to truly understand them and we become able to manage them, which is, in other words, to peacefully navigate through our conflicts, we'll be able to manage, to mitigate, to minimize all those impacts, which are the negative impacts, are just results of our instinctive response to conflicts, right? It's our the thought of the stuff of our reptilian brain, our instinctive brain, which is to fight or flight in other cases. But what are some of our challenging behaviors? How can those behaviors impact others, right? Just this day-to-day stuff. She brings several, but I would like to highlight here three, right? Once we feel our desire, we want to grow and be productive, whatever productive may mean, there is a counter to that, which is being lazy. And guess what? Not only being lazy is a temptation within ourselves, but others who are lazy tempt us as well. So that it's a Sunday morning for some, afternoon for the others. And we just want to do nothing, be lazy. What happens to also our desire to do something meaningful, productive, etc., right? That's opposing forces. The other one that she brings, and I would like to highlight here because it's so pervasive in our lives, right? And it becomes a part of a actual an addictive behavior, which is negativity, right? Negativity. And that idea to put down, to tarnish even a vision, our sense of that horizon that we want to reach, that almost utopia. We want to be able to live in a peaceful world, and it's our utopia, and we're doing everything which is in a very positive manner. We look at everything positive, and then our own conflict, our own temptation is to, nah, not really, not going to happen, or the negativity of others, right? So those are fights, those opposing forces that inhabit within us and everywhere around. And finally, the third one, which is, I love it. I'm Brazilian, so most Brazilians embrace drama. We embrace chaos, don't we? And that's the idea. Our peaceful self, our desire to live a life of balance, of equilibrium, of peace, where we manage everything in a way that does not push us up or down, but is stable. Well, our own inside drama, our own sense of chaos, our own sense of anarchy, if you will, whatever it is out there in the world will contribute to that, right? What are some of the things that we see today that is today, May 2022, right? Today, we're dealing in this world with a war that's happening. We're dealing with the pandemic, right? We're dealing with so many different things. How do we manage that chaos in our lives? All right. So just think about it. Let's consider that as we fight those habits, those feelings, those behaviors, and they all may take us away from our path. And that path is to win, our path to conquer, to have a sense of confidence in life, right? That means that we simply have to be aware of what is in front of us or inside of us, that we need to understand them so we can manage them properly, or become aware so that we see the triggers for us to fall behind. So let's go to our next slide, which is my favorite slide. Why is it my favorite? Is it is because it is so easy to fall prey to the temptation of seeing yourself as a victim. And my friends, this is really what Spiritism is all about, right? When we start to understand the laws of justice, when we start to understand the law of action and reaction, when we start to understand that we have multiple lifetimes, when we start to understand that what seems unjust today may be something that betrays us, if you will, of our past. There is no victim, right? But Joanna brings this quite beautifully as the real temptation in all of us is seeing ourselves as victims. So she lists some of them. I'd love to bring those to all of us to be, to have in our consciousness here, is that think about, and I'd like to bring you with me in this reflection. Have you ever been persecuted, right? In that moment that there's somebody attacking us, persecuting us, trying to do whatever to put us down, are we not tempted to fight back, to push back, and to strike? That's a temptation. What about those times that you were accused? Especially if that accusation is not truth. And I always remember this because it's something that's stuck in my memory, right? Most of you have heard of Socrates, right? And Socrates was put to death. He was killed, right? He drank poison, and he at the he was in prison because he was accused to instigate the youth to become rebellious, etc. And his wife, I forget her name now, came to him and just said, Socrates, Socrates, please react. React, because you've been falsely accused. And Socrates, as Socrates is known to have said to her, woman, so you would prefer that I was justly accused? And I love it because in that it's the question, is it better to be innocent and being falsely accused, or to actually be guilty and be rightly accused? Anyways, this is just a parenthesis. But when we are accused of something, inherent in us, right, is the temptation to respond, to retaliate even. What about our efforts, our best intentions? When we do the best and we are falsely understood, or we are misunderstood, right? We talked a lot about it last week, and it's just so easy to not understand what is behind the misunderstanding of the others, of feeling victim and having that. So I think this is especially powerful to me. um what about rejection, abandonment? Have you ever felt that way? And this is also a very powerful list within the list of when we are falsely, when we're falling victims of ourselves, right? Rejection and abandonment really means that you're no longer accepted. No longer being accepted, and I put a little, my hands here like a circle, right? No longer being accepted, that means that you're no longer part of that social whatever, a social network, a community, a clique. Can you imagine that? in this world of social media, where you put an opinion and you're rejected, you become a pariah, or you have a family and for whatever reason you feel that the family is no longer welcoming you, whatever is the circumstance. I even think in terms of let's say in many of professions that have spent, oh, say 20 years working for an organization, and all of a sudden, poof, they are cut for whatever reason, organizational changes, and the feeling is of rejection, of abandonment. How come was I'm no longer accepted, right? So it's easy, it's so easy. The temptation here is to feel as a victim, right? And to also get angry. It's easy to get so angry that you want to act upon revengeful acts, right? To go back and go back to that company, or go back to that person that abandoned you, or even go back in the social media and refute what was said about you. So another one that she says, and we're almost done here with this list, but it's really important, is that she said, and again, this is so true for today's age, which is when we are vilified. What does it mean, Miss Joanna de Angelis? What do you mean by when we are vilified? Well, we are cast as a villain, whatever that is. So again, when we are, if we are ever called the enemy, the villain, the bad person, which is so easy to happen, right? There's all the spin doctors out there in for people of power. I'm talking maybe a mega entrepreneur, a billionaire, or a politician, whatever that may be, an actor, actress. Those who are cast by a group of people in the media or not, or even you, when if you are that person that has been cast as a villain, it's so easy to want to discredit. How can you do this to me? And now you're creating a reputation that is not equal to who I am, right? So if that happens, we are often want to do the reverse. I am going to discredit you, the source of my ill reputation, and I'm going to demoralize you with whatever opportunity I can. When we fall sick, Joanna, what are you talking about? Yes. When we fall sick, the temptation is actually to feel defeated, to feel weak, to lose our spirit. That too is a temptation. When we are betrayed, it could be your spouse, your best friend, your family, right? Again, organizations. When you feel that they betrayed that commitment that you had with that person, so easy to allow that betrayal to bring in you, to tempt you to become bitter. And that's what she's talking about, what we become as a reaction to that. So when we, oh goodness, when we, she even lists this, when we are hit, and I say hit because I actually feel as a physical hit, when somebody hits you with irony, wit, even, it can break you, right? Those terrible jokes, those that humor to make other people laugh at you. And we have an incident, as you know, in the Oscars that created so much discussion about that. And finally, could be the worst of all, but when people make you feel that you're nothing, you're not important, you're so unimportant that they become indifferent to you, and that the lack of compassion to your own struggle may lead us to really become angry, irate to that. So Joanna brings this package of temptations, and it's very interesting because in all of them we need to think about. It's all about that sense of external situations that could and should, as a temptation to fall victim, grant us the permission to return with an aggression that is inside of us. Does this make sense? I hope it does. So the question here is for all of us is to pause and reflect upon the awareness of this external force pushing us out of our sense of balance, and how our internal strength, if we have it, to recognize this is coming, but I am stronger than that. I'm not going to fall victim or fall to the feeling of being a victim, and in turn retaliate with force and becoming that person that is expressing through our very instinctual aspects. So remember, if nothing happens, that is not for your best. So this is, I'm about to close our discussion today because it's important for us to know. And you can say, oh, Marcia, you are so naive, this person's taking advantage of me, etc. No, nothing out there happens for that is not for our own good. So we need to look at it to take advantage so that we can look at those moments, those temptations to grow. So if you can go to the next slide so we can close, which is all about understanding temptation. And Joanna talks about this boulder, right? This boulder on the road that can be read as seen as anything that will block me. I'm a traveler, right? On a journey, and I'm going from where I was to where I want to be. But that temptation is exactly that boulder that is stopping us from growing. And she says, well, Marcia, at the same time that the boulder blocks you from going from continue your journey, it is also what stimulates your growth. So I'm going to ask your permission to go a little bit longer than our 30 minutes, because I wanted to just go a little bit with this concept that she brings in the book, right? If we look as this figure here says, right, we get out of our car, however we're moving ourselves in this road, and uh, what is going on? If I stop to take the stock of the situation, and we can see, well, the boulder is quite big, I cannot move it, I could go around, and you start to look at into reflect upon what is it that this boulder represents to us, right? And again, remember the temptation, the boulder is the temptation. Temptation can be anything external or internal to us. So let's think of it as the pause needed to stimulate our own inner transformation. If we were to just use anything that happens to us, those boulders, as a source of irritation and anger, and we go and you kick and try to do the best, but don't realize what is it doing to us to grow, we are falling behind in that opportunity. So let's think about it. Those usual temptations, right, can be those feelings, and we talked about it before. It can also be, maybe just as example, because it's too easy to say this example, but let's say I'm in a committed relationship, but I have a temptation regarding sex outside of my relationship. What is it that this temptation is telling me? Let us think about it, and not self punish, but understand what is going on and reflect and transform ourselves. Or even other things that push us perhaps to, I don't know, addictive behavior, substance abuse, etc. Let's just look at it. That's my boulder. Let's think, let's look, let's see how this is going to bring me to be a better person. And she really alerts us, right? Without the boulder, without the temptation, we really would not grow. That's a very interesting moment for us to ponder. Without that boulder, I would not be a better person. And the best example to that is, I love swimming and I want to be the best swimmer, let's say I love to quote Michael Phelps, the swimmer, right? I read his autobiography a long time ago, and it's so good. And it's like if Michael Phelps was not in the Olympics and he was not in this competition, right? He would not be better in his discipline approach to practicing, et cetera, et cetera. So the competition, the others are our temptations. We are faced to become better so that we can overcome them. My last slide, and I promise it one more minute, because we're going to wrap our study today just with this idea that Joanna brings this call for action, right? To welcome your temptations, to face them with the largest amount of that sense of peace that you can bring with you. And if I go into the analogy of Michael Phelps, right, they are the stopwatch. The temptation is the stopwatch. Okay, Marcia, last time the temptation came, the your own self in the pool, Michael Phelps, right? You did 1 minute, so let's see how you're doing. And I love this figure here because it's like the next temptation in the orange circle is actually a little bit, taller than the others, because as we win, as we overcome, as we're able to take stock of whatever it is, internal or external, that is causing us to react in a good, right, the good person manner, or in a way that you're still unaware of your capacity to cause pain or harm. If we're doing better, then better, bigger challenges will come. So within that, she says, when we overcome, or when we're called upon with those temptations to overcome all that is inherent within us. What are you talking about? Your limitations, our own selfishness, arrogance, and so on and so forth, right? As we are face to face with them, they're no longer hidden until they're provoked, right? When we are able to face them, those provocations, those temptations are a source for us to look and reflect and discover, right? We discover our own vulnerabilities and we become stronger through those temptations. So with each victory, we against temptation, we become stronger. And I close today with the idea that we'll keep talking more, but I hope this discussion today was fruitful to you as much as was fruitful to you. And I will see you next Sunday. Thanks so much.